Welcome everybody to the Authentic as Fog podcast. My name is Sun. In this podcast, I work with members of our community to kind of coach them through marketing and storytelling and answer any kind of questions. Today we have Marwa, my friend Marwa. Hi, Marwa.
Hi, Son. How are you doing?
So good to see you. Let's
Good to see you too.
let's start with your intro. Tell us where you're from, what you do, and we'll go from there.
Okay, I'm from Egypt and I work as a dentist. In addition, I am a pronunciation and fluency coach.
And do you have so you're a dentist, that's your day job, and then you also work on your own. Your own business is like
Yes.
influencing coach.
So I teach at college for dental students. And so my regular day would be in the morning, I would go give some lectures, supervise some clinics. On the afternoon, I prepare the lunch. And then in the evening, I work on my business.
Okay. So you're also a mom.
I'm a mom
so
for
everybody.
3 children.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get started. Do you have a question? Is there anything you want to work through today?
Well, I just like the first thing that I really wanted to share is that I had a podcast this morning with so I created this course about fluency for one of the uh very well-known platforms here in the Middle East, something like Udemy or Domestika, but it's in Arabic. And during the podcast, like on my way there, I was like rehearsing in my head what I'm going to say. And then I said, oh, no, why wouldn't I just reframe it in a story? And I know that in Night Owl, we always like members in the community always ask, how can we link stories to business? And I always had this question in my head, and today it came naturally. Like I was thinking of something and how to deliver it or how to like make the message clear, and then I started to remember a story and I found a link. So it was amazing, and it didn't just happen like once. I think I said 3 stories in 20 minutes, which for me is really good because it's amazing. So this is just something that I was really excited to share because I was just waiting for this moment to happen where I would be able to link
You were like
stories.
you were just like having faith that it's gonna happen, like because I've been telling everybody. So yeah, I just to give people context, what I've been saying at Night Owl is just practice connecting the dots, telling stories and practicing connecting the dots from here to this story to this story. And what's gonna happen is naturally you're going to be able to connect it to your business, and you're going to be able to. And the way I do it usually is like whenever I'm teaching something, I'll teach something and I say, for example, and then I come up with some sort of a story or something that I connect it to. And I'm assuming that's the same thing happened to you today. So
Yeah, it was amazing.
That's when it starts really being fun, and that, it's just going to keep happening. And I think also another thing is when you're put on the spot like that, when you're teaching a class or when you're in a podcast, when the spotlight is on you, and you, for some reason in those moments, like my brain goes to overdrive and all these ideas, all these connections start to happen that normally wouldn't happen, like when I'm just sitting by myself. You know what I mean? Like, because I think something about that pressure, like, forces your brain to like connect those dots even more. So I'm glad you experienced that.
Yeah.
Okay. So what can I help you with? Let's dig a little deeper.
Well, regarding the last Sunday service about the victim, hero, villain, I was wondering how can we draw a line, or how can we differentiate between us victimizing ourselves or being a true victim?
Well, everything that happens, sometimes we're a victim because we're victimized by outside forces, right? Somebody actually did us wrong, or some sort of injustice has been done to us, right? And that happens all the time, right? Like it could be as simple as I went outside and then I stepped on shit. like you know what I mean? Some external factor happens, but I think victimizing ourselves is the consequences of how we react to it. So, when I say don't stay a victim, and we got to evolve and become a hero. What I'm saying is every day things are going to happen to us. Every day people are going to talk shit about us. Every day something's going to happen. And it's up to us whether we choose, okay, I'm a victim because of that, or like, and a good example I gave is like, like in the US, at least in the US, the hardest for males, like Asians are like the hardest to date, because like Tinder did this. I don't know if it was Tinder, but this research group did this study of all the dating apps, and they looked at what percentage of women pick like what type of men, right? And then they had all the different races. They had the white, black, Latino, and Asians were the lowest. So Asian males get picked the lowest, and then for females, Asian females actually get picked the highest. And then number two was white women. Okay, for males, I think it was white males, and then Latino, and then black, and then Asian. So what's going on is like most of the guys want to date Asian girls, right? And most of the girls want to date Asian guy. I mean, white guys, right? Including the Asian girls. Do you understand what I mean? So
Hmm.
because so that's so for Asian males, like statistically, it's harder for us to date, right? Now, okay, that happened. It's nobody's fault, right? I can be a victim and I can be like, fuck this life, like this sucks, and blah, blah, blah. I can turn against like fuck this woman, and like I can do that, and I can victimize myself. Or I can be like, okay, that's the case. Now what? Now what am I gonna do? Right? Like then I can figure out, okay, why is it that Asian males are not dateable, and why and what how can I overcome that? Well, you know what I mean? And it's the same thing in business, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Like just
So
the
that
thing you
yeah.
said right now triggered a story that I've been telling myself, or that I have, yeah, that I told myself for quite some time, which is, um, I am a Muslim girl or a lady who wants to have space in the social community, international community, and I find myself that maybe I don't have the chance because of, this is how I look, or this is my ethnic background or religious background or whatever. So for so long, I've had this thing in my mind. But
Yeah.
then I said, so,
You're victimizing yourself.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And it doesn't mean it's untrue, right? It can be true that it's more difficult, like from your culture and from your point of view. Yeah, like if you are some white lady from Upper East Side who who is in the middle class woman, then maybe it's easier. Maybe it will be easier for you to get attention and grow your social media and things like that. For
Hmm.
me too, it'll probably I wish I was a white lady. It'll probably be easier for me, but those are not the cards that we were dealt, and we gotta play the best with the cards that we're dealt. And I guess that's what I mean by we shouldn't victimize ourselves. And the same narrative that you were saying, that's the story of my life. Like and I think a lot of actually other Asian people in the US feel that way, where we walk into a meeting. Like, I don't know if you saw that movie Big Short, but it's the one about like in 2008 banking crisis. And there's a scene where Ryan Gosling, who's like this, investment guy, investment banker guy, he goes in and he's pitching like his thing to a group of hedge fund managers, and they're like, how can we trust you, like who's your math, like who's your math guy? And he's like, you see this? And he points to the Asian guy. He's like, that's my math guy. Like, look at him. Like, look at his glasses, right? Like, he won the math. He was like the number one in math league and blah blah blah, right? Like,
Mhm.
that's the stereotype box that we're put in, right? Like, we're the
Yeah.
quiet Asian guy who's good at math, who's just gonna run the numbers. And we're not deal makers. We're not leaders. We're not. That's how every meeting that I've ever went into. That's the box that I'm put in, right? Now I can say, oh, like, woe is me, that sucks, and I'm never gonna succeed in this country. Or I could be like, okay, what can I do to what can I do differently? What Okay, yes, that's the case. Now what, right? Something like
Yeah,
that.
but
But
I think, yeah.
I've been down that rabbit hole, like that kind of downward spiral before, where I was like that, that emo like goth kid that's like me, like Eminem, right? It's me against the world. I hate everyone, like resentment, and it's like, fuck this, fuck the world. Like, I've been like an angry teenager or something like that, right? So I've been down that road before, and the only thing that's gonna bring is resentment, darkness, depression. Like, it's just all that's gonna bring is misery and nothing else, and you're just gonna hate the world more and more and more. Every person that you meet is you're gonna think that they're judging you, and most of that, I think it's in our head, you know
Yeah.
especially these days.
Yeah. So the thing is, um, or like the question is, how would you like raise self awareness um, about whether you are the victim or the villain, or how to stop going down this rabbit hole of, having this negative self talk? Because sometimes it's very difficult. Sometimes you can't do it on your own.
Well, I actually, you brought up a good point, is the more you try to figure it out yourself, the worse it's going to get. For me, like, whenever I'm in that place, okay, like COVID was really like COVID was like a big test for me, because when I'm stuck at home alone and trying to figure out all the problem on my own and do everything on my own, plan everything on my own and things like that, that's when I start actually comparing myself to others. That's when I'm like, like, maybe I can't. Like, I'm in those thoughts whenever I'm alone. But then as soon as I take action, like you did today, you went and taught a class. You're coming on this podcast. Go to a small group meeting. As soon as you start taking action and start doing stuff and start talking to people, because like a lot of the actions that you take is going to involve other people, right? And when we start doing that is when I actually don't think about that. I feel like somebody said the other day, like, the happiest people are not they're busy living their life. They're not they're not wasting time thinking about their life because they're just busy living their life. Something like that. And I think that's so true in this kind of case where, you know, it's kind of like you know, when I'm alone and yeah, yeah, I don't know how else to, like, it's whenever I'm alone in my own thoughts is when I go to that dark place. And then as soon as I go out and go to dinner with friends, or go talk to people, or go on some sort of a community and talk to people, or I'm teaching something, I don't have that.
So, what if you don't have this community? Of course, I'm grateful that I have this community in Night
Yeah.
Owl. Okay, but what
I mean,
if?
then I see you're going into that victim mentality again. Like, oh, I don't have this community, I'm a victim, right? Like, like everything is within your control. There's meetup.com, there's other Facebook groups you can join, there's communities everywhere. And it can be, for me, it's like, here's the thing, right? Actually, you remind me of this time, few years ago, we had an office in New York where it was like a duplex. So it was two floors, and first floor was our office, and second floor was where we lived. And during that, we were there for like a couple years, and during that time, I've literally never left the building. Like sometimes I would go like an entire week without leaving that building, and I really like I almost went into depression during that time. And such a simple thing of me just going to the store and saying hi to the person that's working there, that little simple human interaction like completely like made a big difference. Or just going to the gym or something like that. So that really made a difference. I think it's because like once you start interacting with people, you realize all of those thoughts are just in your head, and you don't even have the moment to overthink about those kind of things. Do you know what I mean?
Okay, so if I wanted to reframe what you just said, it's that we are responsible for um how I just forgot. We are responsible for looking for this community or creating this community or reaching out to people
We are
to help
responsible
us.
for every little thing that happens in our lives.
Hmm.
So you can either take full 100% extreme ownership of your life, or you can say, oh, I can't because of this. I can't. So once I start giving excuses and start blaming other things, that means basically what I'm telling myself is that I'm not in control of my life. Do you understand what I mean? It's kind of like I don't know if you read that book. I never read it too, but I think it's called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. This guy was in the Holocaust. He was a Holocaust prisoner, and one of the things he talks about is how there are people there that just gave up. They're like, oh, this is what happened, and then those are usually the first to die, and then the ones
Mm.
that survived, because he's a survivor. One of the traits of the people that he sees survive had something to live for, right? So it can be as simple as I need to take care of the sick people around here. It could be as simple as like I need to reunite with my wife when I get out, right? Looking forward to that little bit of hope is what keeps them going. And it's also kind of like what's his name, Eckhart Tolle talks about, like when you're like being present, like yeah, let's say you have all these bills to pay, right? And I don't have money to pay those bills, right? It's one thing. Um, One thing, it's like, okay, I can worry about that all I want, right? But worrying about it doesn't pay the bills. It doesn't. It literally does nothing. It doesn't help you in any way, right? Like yes, you have to pay the bill, but you don't
Hmm.
have to worry about it, right? Like what you have to do is like, okay, in order for me to pay the bill, what do I need to do? Okay, what's the course of action? Like, okay, and then you can do whatever it is to take yourself out of the hole. But just sitting there and be like, oh, I'm so worried about this bill. Whatever, there's nothing I can do. Like that's not going to do any good for you, right? That like, there's a difference between uh,
I have a question
yeah,
because you just said like you don't have to worry, okay? But because I've met some people in my life, like it's in their genes. It's
to not worry.
part of their no to worry a lot.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And then there are
Okay,
people who it's in their genes to not worry. There's both.
yeah, yeah. So, uh, because like I'm talking about personality now. Uh, because I once watched a video about how our behaviors are changed, and some of them are related to our genes, and other are related to the environment we were raised in, and that made me think. So, what if, like, this is part of my personality? would it be hard to change it? Or like, do I still have to make the
Well, yeah,
decision
first of
for,
all, we
because
don't
I think
know.
it's going to be easier for some and harder for others. Do you know what I do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, that's always going to be the case. But that again, you're going back to this victim mentality again, right?
No,
Oh,
it's
because
not
I
me. I'm
was
just
born
trying
this way.
to
Do you
understand.
understand what I mean?
Like, I was just saying that I was trying
So,
to
okay, let's
understand.
talk about that first. There's nature
Yeah,
versus
okay.
nurture. The first part of that question is nature versus nurture. Like, are we born with it, or is it something? Is it like our environment, the way we grew up, right? And for me, I actually think a lot of the things is our environment. Like, obviously, some people are born. Like, some people have actually have like clinical depression, but uh, I most of the times, like 90% of the time, when I meet people and they say I'm depressed, blah blah blah. Usually, it's not depression. It's usually because like you just need to wake up early, go to the gym, go hang out with people, and just like do some basic things in your life, and it's just that you have a fucked up life. It's not that you have clinical depression, right? So most of the time, it's like that, and I blame my parents. Like I have this impulsive personality. I'm very. I have a you know I have a temper, and I'm very emotional, and I always blame my dad for that because like I used to get beat up like every week, like by my dad growing up. But yeah, I mean, but you have to change it, and I think it's up to us to change that story. Like one thing I learned in Baptist yoga is that all of those things those stories that we tell ourselves, like, oh, I'm just I'm an immigrant. I can't speak English. I'm a weirdo. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. Whatever, all those stories that we tell ourselves. Like once we really look at the truth and we start seeing, like we start saying it out loud, we start to realize the absurdity of it. Like we start to see how absurd it is that we think that way. And it's almost like when you keep doing that, it loses its power. It lose like all those stories that we tell ourselves. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, well, I have a story right now that when you're just speaking, like when you're saying this, that came to my mind where I feel that I'm like the victim and the villain at the same time. So the story that I have is, my parents have dedicated everything to us, and of course they didn't have a luxury life, but they did their best to provide everything for us. But however, when they reached the age of retirement, somehow they were expecting to receive something in return, like more attention, more care. Uh, we dedicated our lives for you. However, we feel that we are at the bottom of the list. Okay. So this created something inside me. I like I said to myself, okay, I need to create my own life apart from my children's life so that when I grow older, I won't be, doing this to my children. However, when I did this, when I started to have to create my business or my life or whatever, I started to feel selfish. Okay. So, like, the victim part was that I felt that my parents, yes, they did a lot of good things, but, um, you know, I don't know how to to phrase it, but I think they, it's very hard to describe this. But how can I say it? Well, the victim part would be that I felt that I, yeah, that I owe them, and I should not owe them for the things that they should have
Hmm.
done naturally. Like, this is how parents, operate in life. Okay. And
Hmm.
they shouldn't
Hmm.
be expecting something that I can't do. So that's when I made the decision.
Hmm.
I don't want to be, I don't want to, I don't want my children to feel that they're victims.
Depend on your.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
started focusing more on my job. And then I felt the villain because I felt that I'm not doing my full responsibilities as a mother and being selfish
Hmm.
somehow. So, like, I still, like,
It's
sometimes
hard for
not
me to.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard for me to say because I'm not a parent, right? So I'm sure like when I'm a parent, maybe I'll feel differently or something like that. But
Mm,
overall, what I do see a lot is, a lot of I do see a lot of that victim mentality in families where, you know, like a lot of the people that I talk to that say, oh, I feel like there's something missing in my life. I feel like um, something's not right or something like that are usually like mothers who's who's put their entire kind of meaning of their life to raising their children, right? Because when they're young, basically, your whole life is, like they're dependent on you, right? And then once they get into their teenagers and they get older, and they start to see that their kids have their own friends, they have their own life, they don't really need you anymore, right? That's when they start to feel like, oh, like I'm not needed anymore. And I think that comes from like not necessarily a victim. Yeah, I guess you can say, oh, I'm a victim because like like my kids don't love me anymore or something like that. You can say that, but I actually think that comes from trying to control others. Like, and it can be, it's so easy to, I guess, fall in that trap of like trying to control your kids. But um I think there's a little bit of that. And then I don't know, in terms of like I'm not a parent, so I can't really speak for that. Like how, me, let me think. Like I'm trying to think of from the point of view of somebody that I really care for. And yeah, it's hard for me to relate because I'm the type of person that like I will be there for you 100% when you need me, but I'm not gonna impose myself on that person, right? And I also see that a lot of mothers do this where they feel guilty. It's almost like, I guess it has to do with what I said about the bill, like not paying the bill versus like worrying about it. Like I see a lot of parents do this. I feel guilty that I'm at work and I should be spending time with my kids or spending time with my family. And then they're on vacation with their family and they feel guilty they're not working. So it's like they're here and they're worried about this, and they're here and they're worried about that. Like, you know what I mean? So it's almost
totally.
like that's like you worrying about your bills when that literally does no good for you, right? Like you feeling guilty for your children literally is not helping you or helping them. Do you understand what I mean? What you can do is when you are spending time with your children, you can give that 100%. You can be present 100%, and be with them 100%. And then when you're at work, you don't have to worry about your kids. Be there 100%. You know, like
I like
it's
definitely
that
this
it's
is
my
something
entire
I need
life
to learn.
philosophy. Just
Yeah, this is something I need to learn. It's still a skill that I haven't mastered yet, but it's difficult. But it's not impossible.
yeah, I don't think anybody mastered it. unless you're Buddha or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I try to live life like that. Like, for example, right now I have this podcast, and right after I have this call that I have to do with this person, which is a little bit of conflict, right? And after that, I still need to write my email that I'm supposed to send out today, which I couldn't get to last night. So yeah, I can sit here and I can worry about that, or I can just like completely forget about that and just 100% be present and in having this conversation. And I think for me, when I actually, you know what, I can relate, but because when I first started my business, Night Owl, that's how I was worried about a million things all the time. Okay, like this client, okay, that how's this project going? Okay, like this client is like, we're late on this project. Okay, like is there any spelling mistakes in this project? Blah, blah, blah. Like I was just million like and I was, and a lot of it was my ego. It was like,
Mm.
well, I eventually realized a lot of it is my ego, because what I'm worried about is, okay, what if this happens and we lose this client, right? Or this
Mm.
client gets mad at me and we lose our reputation, and people are like, oh, Night Owl, they're not they're a hot mess, right? Like even now at Night Owl
Mm.
Nation, the old me would have been like, oh, Night Owl is such a hot mess. They're not organized. They don't have clear set agendas, and they're just whatever. Like, but that's my ego thinking, okay, what are people gonna think of me when what are Night Owl Nation members going to think of me? What are these other people going to think of me, right? And I really like, that's why I constantly talk about be a nobody, be a beginner, like be present, all those ego talks that I do. It's because I really need to put myself, like, and that's the underdog thing that I was talking about, right? Like
Yes.
I literally look at myself as, okay, everybody hates me already. Everybody already thinks I'm a loser. Everybody thinks I'm a nobody. Okay, when I start from that place, like, okay, like I have this like this call after this and with this conflict, but if she hates me and she thinks I'm a, you know, I'm whatever it is that she thinks, okay, fine, right? And then after that, okay, if I promised everyone that I'm gonna send out this email today, and what if I don't get to it and I can't send it out? Everybody's gonna hate me. Okay, fine. Do you understand what I mean? Like you almost have to
Yeah.
give up on yourself. I almost had to give up on myself and give up on my life and give up trying to prove to anyone anything. Do you understand what I mean?
I yes, of course, because I think, but like I think it's innate in us to prove ourselves as human beings. So
Well, it's
that's where,
innate
like, when you,
because it's we learn to do that. It's not innate. I don't think it's innate, right? When a 3 year or old baby is not trying to prove themselves, right? Like
yeah,
they're
but
literally just
when
doing whatever
they,
they want, right?
yeah, but when they, like, the first time they do things on their own, they like, look, mommy, what did it do? You know, so they
Yeah. So
are
they learn. It's
happy
a
with
learned skill,
their,
right?
because they got praise.
Yeah, the validation
Yeah.
is a learned skill. So like, because we are a social animal, we talked about this once. Like the reason why we're social animals and we're tribal is because hundreds of thousands of years ago. I mean, I know you're religious, so you might not believe the same thing I believe, but hundreds of thousands of years ago, um, we when we evolve, like if you believe in evolution, what happens is, the ones that try to fit into the tribe, try to get other people to like them, they were in a tribe, so their survival rate was higher, right? The ones that are like, I don't care what anyone else thinks, the ones that were like, didn't care about social validation, didn't care about what everyone else thinks, they were outcasts and they were alone. So their chance for survival was much lower, so they died off. So, you know, like hundreds of thousands of years of that, like more and more we evolved to be more tribal, like trying to get validation from others. Because like literally, if a group of tribe kicks me out of the tribe, that's literally death for me, right? So that's why, like, they say the only thing that people fear more than death itself is public speaking. Like, we care more about what other people think of us than death. Do you understand what I mean? So, I think that's naturally in our genes, right? But then, when a baby is born, I don't think they're born thinking that. I think what happens is, as soon as that baby smiles, you know how you know that before a baby is 2 years old, if you don't pay any attention to them, if they're not cared for, like, that baby can grow up to be a sociopath. Because one of the we learn these social skills at a very, very early age. So when a baby is like ha, 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 laughing, right, and then like and the mom is like trying to make them like, hey, goo goo ga 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 ga, and then the baby laughs. What's happening is the baby is getting validation. They're like, oh, when I smile and when I laugh, they like me, and they and they're learning how to charm people at that early age, right?
Mm,
And then, like you said,
mm,
as they grow up, they're trying to prove
mm,
to their mom because they want their mom's validation and all of that. But then, it's much, much, much less at that age, right? Like, a child doesn't care. Like, when I was young, I would go out and I would, like, always have, like, food stain on my shirt. Like, I look like a hot mess, and, like, I didn't care when I was 5 years old, 6 years old, right? Like, now I would care so much about, like, what are other people going to think of me. But that's I think that's learned over time. We put on this mask over mask and mask, and essentially, like, it's extreme in high school, right? Like, in high school, everybody's trying to be cool.
yes.
Nobody wants to be the loser, right? And then you graduate college, and even at work, we're doing the same thing. Like, I think the workplace, the real world, is just a one big huge high school, right? It's social media is one big popularity contest, right? And Gary Vee is just popular, right? Tony Robbins is popular, and then there's ones that are not popular, right? So,
Mm,
and probably it was probably the same thing. The ones that are popular right now in public space were probably the ones that were popular when they were younger, in their high school, right? And yeah, I think it is a learned skill over time. And I think for me, I really had to I really had to unlearn that. And even now, I care a lot about what other people think, and I catch my like. Here's a good example. 2 months ago, when I went on Twitter for like when I first started like really using Twitter, I was like, okay, I have 500 followers. Like, I'm getting no engagement, no nothing at all. I'm just gonna use Twitter just to put down my thoughts. I don't care about followers. I don't care if people like my post. I don't give a shit. I'm just gonna use it as my notebook, just to jot down my thoughts. And I started doing that. I would like tweet after tweet after tweet, blah blah blah. But over time, like, when I started gaining followers, when people were like praising me, oh, good content, blah 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 blah. All of a sudden, I get self conscious, and I'm like, now every post that I do, I'm trying to, like, oh, is this gonna are people gonna like this?
mm,
And, like, if I
mm,
back then, I would, like, just post 10 in a row, like, like, whatever thought comes out, I'll just post it. But now I'm like, oh no, if I just post it, so if I post another one, then it's not gonna get traction. It's not gonna get views. So I'm gonna wait 3 hours before I post. Like, it's I am constantly dealing with that right now. So then I have to now every time those happens, I have to catch myself, and I have to be like, no, no, I have to remind myself, no, I'm just using Twitter as a notebook. It's not. I don't care about followers. Like, every single day I need to constantly remind myself. Like, when I show up on Sunday service, like, whenever I'm trying to impress people and blah blah blah. Oh, no, no, no. I just need to be present. The only thing I care about is making sure that these people learn and be present with them. Like, I constantly, every single day, 10 times a day, 20 times a day, I have to remind myself of that.
so I think that,
Does that make sense?
like, yeah, yeah, I mean,
It
so,
doesn't come natural to me.
like, yeah, because I think many of, like, startups and, like, people who are starting to post on social media have the same problem, including myself, because every time I post anything and I don't get any responses, no likes, no comments, nothing, I perceive this as a message of, your work is not good enough, or your videos are not good enough, or your posts are not good enough, or the content is not good enough. So I think this is something that many people have, that when they post something,
I actually think you're. Can I correct you on that? I don't think people
yeah.
think that my post is not good enough, my content is good enough. What they think is I'm not good enough. That's where the problem comes. If you can
Hmm.
separate yourself from the content, yeah, if the content is not good enough, fine. As long as I'm not good enough, I am good enough, right? Because what
Yeah,
people
but
do
this is
is
the
when the
problem,
content fails, you,
because
so
sometimes
you
you
need to
think
detach
that
yourself
your
from the content. And
content
I guess
is, yeah, like that your content is a
it's you.
representation of who you are. Yes. So sometimes they kind
Yeah,
of like,
that's your ego.
exactly.
That's your ego speaking. Like, you know, the reason why I know is because I've been a designer for 20 years, right? So when I design something and I spend like a week designing something and I present it to the client, and the client starts ripping it apart, it's like, nah, this sucks, this is bad. Like, once I start getting criticism about that design, it personally hurts me. Do you know what I mean? Like, it personally hurts me to a point that I start getting defensive about it. Like, no, you don't understand. Like, I did it like this, but it even gets to a point where I get so defensive that even when the client is saying the right thing, like they're like, "Oh no, that's too small to read. So can you make that bigger? Because I can't really read that." And he's right, because yeah, maybe like a 50-year-old is reading that and there is too small, so they can't really see, right? But it's hurt my ego, right? It's like, oh, he's criticizing my work. Therefore he's criticizing me, my skill as a designer, right? So I end up ignoring even the correct comments, the correct feedback, right? So I had to learn
Yeah.
at a certain point, and I think all designers have to learn this at some point. I had to detach myself from the work, and
Do you have a
once I
process?
finished my work, I literally had to. Now I guess it kind of happens naturally, but like what I have to do is I've learned to put on two different hats. So I have a designer hat on, and I have a project manager hat on, right? So when I have my project management hat on, it's almost like I'm taking off this ego, but I'm putting on another ego. And I think in the beginning, you kind of have to do that. You have to play with your ego a little bit, because what happens is when I have the project manager hat on and that mask on and
Hmm.
that ego wants to please the client. Do you understand what I mean? That ego doesn't care about this guy's design. It's almost like at that point, it's almost like I'm presenting somebody else's design. And when the client starts criticizing the design, I'm like, oh, you're right. You're right. How stupid was I to do that? Do you understand what I mean?
Okay, I have another
But then,
question.
like, that started to help me. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think like while you're speaking right now, I think many people are going to have this question in their head. So I have, like, let's say that
Okay.
I have this hat of a content creator. Okay. So I put this hat
Hmm.
of content creator. Then I put out my content, and as I receive feedback on the content, what hat should I be putting? The nobody
So
hat?
when you're a content creator, I think, yeah. So in my hat, like, there's two types of content creator, or even within content creation, there's two roles, right? One
Hmm.
is the entrepreneur side of content creation, and the other one is the creative side of content creation. Okay. And so the entrepreneur side is like Gary Vee. Okay. The creative side is more like Chris Do or Mr. Beast or somebody like that, who's really like proud of their work, right? Now, a lot of times when we create, most of us, when we create, like, if you create content like Gary Vee, you don't even have to worry about it, right? Because like one of the things is, it says, like, when people go to him and be like, oh, but I can't sacrifice quality, like, And he goes like, who determines that quality? Who says who says quality? You? Like you decide what the quality is? No, like what the audience says is quality. If it performs and everyone likes it, that means it's quality, right? That's a very logical business mind way of thinking that, right? So
Mm.
it's almost like that's the Gary Vee style of content creation, right? So he doesn't care that he's showing up on Zoom with a terrible camera, terrible audio. He really doesn't give a shit, right? Like as
Yes.
long as as long as the only thing he cares about is like one of the things he says, like the market doesn't give a shit about your feelings, right? Like so to him, he doesn't he doesn't treat content creation as like creative task. He treats it as like it's a numbers game. Do you understand what I mean?
Mm.
And then,
Mm.
so even in marketing, there's that. There's the numbers side, right? There's the analytics people that all they do is look at analytics. Okay, that perform A/B testing and blah 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 blah. Those type of people, they don't give a shit about the
Mm.
creative, right? Like what worked. That's all. That's the only thing they care about. And then over here, there's the creative side, the artist side. That's like, okay, the, that's where the ego comes in. And I think you kind of need a balance of both things. So I think when you're creating, you have to have the creative hat on, where it's like, okay, I'm gonna try to word this like this, make it look like this, and all of that, and then you put it out, and then now you need to head on the analytics person hat on, right? And then do that perform, and
Mm.
then maybe you have to go back and look at, okay, that didn't perform because of this reason or whatever it is. But at that point, like when my videos fail, when my content fails, now I've gotten so used to, like, you know what? I actually think it's the reps of, like, the first time you go to the gym, you're gonna be in pain, right? The second time you're gonna be in pain. You're gonna be in pain for a while. It's gonna suck for a while, and then you do it long
Mm.
enough. At some point, like it becomes pain. Like it's you become numb to that pain, right? And this is the same for almost anything, right? Anything in life. So I've
Mm.
been making content for so long that I become so numb to it. Like nothing that anybody says phases me anymore because I've heard
Mm.
it all. And like when a good content fails, it really doesn't really bother me anymore. I just look at it as an immediately where my mind goes is like, "Ah, that probably failed because of this, this, and this," and I don't associate that with, oh, that probably failed because I did that. Like, no,
Mm. Mm.
it's once the content is put out there, it's not even mine. It's not even me anymore.
Mm. You know what? Something you said that's really amazing, and I loved it so much, is that when you said, I've been there so many times in this, down in the rut. Okay. So, like, this gives someone like me hope that knowing that when I'm down, definitely I'm gonna go up, and when I'm like up here, I'm definitely gonna go down again, and it's okay. Because most of the time I would think,
Hmm.
mm, maybe I did something wrong. Maybe it's just and this makes me quit or not finish to the end or not push through. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to look at how I was when I first started putting content, and then even now. You see, the reason why. So right now in Twitter, I'm getting some of that trigger back from like 3 years ago when I first started Instagram.
Mm.
I had all this trigger, right? Like, and now I'm getting some of that back, right? Because like now, like it's so hard for me to get one follower. Because like nobody knows who I am on Twitter. No, like people are just probably dismissing me, like, who the fuck is this guy? Like and it literally makes me feel like a loser, right? It literally makes me feel like, am I really, like, am I just saying everything that everyone else saying? Like, do you know what I mean? But then once in a while, you get that validation of, like, things like that, and that helps in things like that. But I think the
Yeah.
reason why I'm able to do that on Twitter right now, and it doesn't phase me, I'm putting out 5, 10 tweets every day, and it doesn't phase me, even though I'm not seeing that validation, is
Mm-hmm.
because it's a familiar feeling that I went through 3 years ago. with Instagram,
Exactly.
right? And the reason why when I went through Instagram, it was a little bit easier for me than it is for most people is because it's a familiar feeling when I went through when I was building Night Owl. Because in the beginning of the Night Owl, literally everybody around me was questioning me. Like Gigi's parents were like, "Why don't you guys just quit and just go get a job?" Right? So think about this. Like think about me hearing from my mother-in-law telling my wife, like, hey, you guys are struggling for 2 years, why don't you go get a job, right? They're worried about us. And then
Mm.
and then Gigi coming to tell me, they're like, hey, this is what my mom thinks, blah blah blah, right? Like just think about the think about how heartbreaking that is for me to hear when we're making no money. It seems like there's no, and then but the reason why I was able to say to Gigi, but like, we'll be okay, like we're gonna make it, blah blah blah, is because that's exactly what happened when I started freelancing. Like
Mm.
it's they say it's darkest before dawn. It really is the darkest before dawn. I was literally about to quit freelancing and go get a job when things started happening for me. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, it's definitely not easy. And another thing I want to say is this. Sometimes, because I've met a lot of people that are like very successful, right? And not just publicly, but also maybe just in their business and things like that. And you know how they say, never meet your heroes? Have you heard that term before?
Ah, yeah.
Like, whoever you really admire, when you
Mm.
actually meet them in person, you're like, you're not really impressed, right? And because almost everybody that I met, not almost 100% of people that I met, that I was like, oh, this person is definitely different than me, right? This
Mm.
person is special. They got something in their genes or something in their blood. That's why they're like that, and I will never be like that, right? Every person I've met who are wildly successful, what I realize is like, oh, you're just a human being like me. You worry about the same thing I worry about. Like, do you understand what I mean? We think that it comes easy for them, right? It's because we don't see what goes in the background. Like here's what a lot of people don't see. People see like Gary Vee or somebody like that, or me, or even like um even like somebody super famous, and like Kanye West, for example, right? What they don't see is that, I heard that when Kanye West works, he literally doesn't sleep. Like he'll work for like 3 days in a row, and then like he'll just sleep in the chair for a little bit, and then if somebody like is like, you don't see the blood and sweat and the misery that they're going through in the behind the scenes. The only thing you see is the success.
Yes.
So what a lot of people assume is that, oh, it came easy for them. Oh yeah, it works because of him. Like of course he's that type of person, she's that type of person. What they don't see
Mm.
is the amount of hardship and misery that they're going through behind the scene. If you actually saw that, you'll be like, oh fuck yeah, I'm not doing any of that.
Yes.
Right? Like it's kind of like, I had this employee who saw what we were doing at Night Owl, and they're like, "Oh, I can do this. I can go start my own agency." Blah blah blah. So he quit, and he did, and within a year, he he gave up, and he came asking me for clients and things like that. Right? It's because he doesn't see what goes around. He doesn't realize what's going on in the background. That, if we're having cash flow problems, that we have to go to the bank and we have to take out a loan so that we can make payroll, and that we're literally every month that we have $100,000 a month expense. So, and every month, like I'm literally staying up at night because I'm so worried. Like, are we going to be able to meet payroll this month? Like, okay, am I going to be able to get paid from the client? Like one time I like went to the bank because I had to, like, we literally had no money in the bank, and I had to like go beg a client to give us a check, and then I got the check while I was there. I went straight to the bank, and the bank wouldn't let us deposit it because, like, for some reason, and I started yelling at the banker, and the banker like threatened to call the client, and it was like so much drama. Like the this is all while I was sleeping like I was working 18, 20 hours a week, like barely sleeping at all. And these are the shit that people don't see. Do you understand what I mean?
Mm. Yeah.
So a lot of people think they're like, oh, Son's just smart. That's why he got. No, if you realize the
Mm.
shit that I had to go through to get to where I am, it's
I have another
it's not
question.
pretty, but we
I
all
have
have to
another
go through
question.
that. Yeah,
Okay. Maybe just
yeah.
one final question.
Hmm.
Uh, do you usually take the advice
We can keep going.
okay. Like, do you usually take the advice of prioritizing sleep, working out, eating healthy, having a morning routine? Because sometimes, to be honest, I feel that it's not applicable all the time because I've seen many people, I don't want to call names, okay, but many very well known people
Hmm.
who would go and lecture people about how to healthily live their lives. And sometimes it's a bit difficult to reach this, very organized life with, when you when you wake up 5 a.m. in the morning, work out, meditate, journal, then go to work, and then sleep early. And because when I listen to this, because I was there,
I think that's like
and it was very difficult for me to keep up. Then I quit, and I hated myself for quitting. And I said, because they said successful people do this, and I don't do this, so I'm a failure.
mhm, mhm.
You know.
The other day somebody said, um, entrepreneurship and fitness are linked, right? Like people who are successful entrepreneurs, they're fit, right? And we like to believe that because you see Joe Rogan with his like ice bath, and you see all these entrepreneurs that are like super fit, and they wake up early, they go to the gym, they meditate, do all of that. Well, I'll debunk that right now. Look at the three most successful entrepreneurs in the world: Bill Gates, Warren Buffett,
Elon
and
Musk.
Elon Musk. Are they fit? Right? Like they're not fit at all, right? They're not doing the ice bath by like I just think I think everyone's built differently, right? For me, I think sleep is important. For me, what I realized is that when I was working like that, what I realized is that I was actually putting energy in wrong places. So I was like wasting a lot of time. So I wasn't working efficiently. I was working hard, but I wasn't working efficiently, right? So I had to learn how to balance that because, I did that for like 10 years. And then somebody told me that it really hit me when somebody said, how you work now is how you're going to work 10 years from now. And that really hit me because 10 years ago, I was like, oh, I'm going to kill myself right now so that 10 years from now, I don't have to do that anymore. But 10
Okay,
years
take a
from
note.
now, I was still doing that. Do you understand what I
Okay,
mean?
I just need to take note of this one. Okay.
It's recording. So,
Okay.
so what happened was 10 years ago, 10 years before that, what I was doing was I was working my ass off
Mm-hmm.
just to pay my rent. Okay.
Mm.
10 years later, I was working my ass off so that I can pay for my $100,000 a month expense. do
Mm.
you get it?
Yeah.
So how you work doesn't change. Maybe the amount that changes, but how you work is not going to change, right?
Mm.
And that's when I started like kind of like I started having a little bit more balance. Like I think sleep is something that's so important because like when I'm not sleeping, it just makes I'm so unproductive. I waste so much time, and um, like especially the type of work that we do. Like
Mm.
I can do the same thing in 1 hour, like especially like coming up with stories and creative work, right? Design, things like that. Something can take me 5 hours if I'm not in the right mood, but I could get it done in an hour if I'm like in the flow state and I'm in the zone, right?
Mm.
and
Mm.
sleep does get in the way of that, like, you know. So
Mm.
I did learn that. Another thing I learned, I guess, over time is, when people are the biggest mistake that I see in the newer entrepreneurs, which I did for probably about 10 years, is that we do something where, like, okay, this is our strategy. And then I go watch this YouTube video where somebody's like, no, you got to do ice bath and blah, blah, blah. Or somebody says, no, you got to make content like this. No, you got to use hook. Here's the new strategy. Here's the new algorithm. And then I'm like, oh shit, no, I got to do this. And I do this. And then I see some new strategy. I'm like, no, I got to do this. And then I read this new self-help book. It's like, no, I got. And what happens is you can never, ever grow something like that. You know what I mean?
Mm.
A lot of times,
Exactly.
like, one of the most, like, one quote that really hit me was, it was actually from that show, The Crown. It was about Queen Elizabeth. He said, most of the time, the best course of action is to do nothing. And this is what most new entrepreneurs don't understand. When a problem happens, immediately they're trying to fix it, right? But 9 out of the 10 times, you just have to let the problem happen. Because there's a difference between me having a bad day and this business, like me having a wrong strategy, right?
Mm.
Like, we let our emotions decide those little moments so much that, I might have a stressful day where none of my content works. Somebody was talking shit about my content. I'm like, oh, this isn't working. We have to change the whole strategy, right? Like, the other day, I almost did that. I was on a small group leader meeting, and I'm like, I'm actually thinking about, what I'm thinking about doing is, I'm thinking about just getting rid of Sunday service and do more, like, you know, teach more, like, business skills, like content creation skills, making carousels and blah blah blah. And then everybody in the small group leader is like, no, son, like, I love coming to, you know what I mean? So it's
Yes.
like, we let these, like, emotions, like, we feel like something's not working and we feel like we need to change it right away, and then I change it, and then you
Mm.
change it again, and change it again, change it again, and that's why the business is not growing. When what you have to do is, okay, it's not working, but you have to keep at it. Okay, there's going to be some days where you have problems, but you just got to keep at it. You keep at it long enough, that's when
Mm.
momentum is built, right? That's
Mm.
why, like, you know like, even on my TikTok, right? Like, why am I still posting on TikTok every day, 2 3 times a day, even though it's getting 100 views, 200 views, right? Like, yeah, we have to build momentum. And then the other day, like, one video got like 60,000 views, right? But if I had given up, that would have never happened, right? And the same thing on YouTube, same thing on Instagram, same thing on Twitter. Now my Twitter is starting to grow and it's starting to get recognition.
Mm.
But in that first month and a half, if I was like, this is not working, I need to change my strategy, it wouldn't have worked. What would have happened is, my account would have just become like every other account, where it's like, okay, here's how I had 0 to 100,000 followers on Instagram by using these tactics. Here's how I did it. Click, and then trick them into opening it. Like, that's what everyone does, and I would have just followed that exact same thing, right? But that's the thing. Like, we need to set a strategy that works for us based on my personality, my experience, and my everything. I think this is the right way to go. Once you've logically made that decision, you just
Mm.
gotta stick with it for months, maybe even a year, whether it's working or not. Right? Not like one week you have a bad week and you're like, okay, we need to shift directions, right? Like, for you, I've already said, like, it's so obvious to me. Your strength is the phonetics, like the technical parts of language pronunciation, right? Like,
Mhm.
not necessarily like building communities or something like that, but like the technical, because you actually have an interest in how your mouth moves and how it makes sounds and things like that, which
Mhm.
I haven't seen before a lot with other language teachers. So then you got to double down on that, and you can't say, oh, that's not working, until 6 months later. You literally have to do that every day for 6 months. And then
Mm.
if 6 months later it's nothing is happening, then maybe you can look at the situation. Okay, what's going on, and you can tweak it a little bit or something like that. But you can't be like, okay, that's not working, I'm going to go with this whole new strategy, something like that.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. I can totally relate to this. And I think like sometimes the problem is that you um like you listen to advice based on like that the person who is saying this is an authority or is supposed to be the, you know, the guru, as they say in this field. So you trust what they say, and then when you try it for yourself, you discover that it doesn't work. So you instantly say it doesn't work because of me, not because of them. And I'm so grateful that I came across you because you changed many things of, you know, things that things that's been there inside my head and they were completely untrue.
Yeah. You know, like if I try to do this like Christo, it wouldn't work. If I try to do it like Gary Vee, it wouldn't work. If I try to do it like Seth Godin, it wouldn't work. If I try to do it like this, there are so many people that I admire, but if I try to do it like them, it wouldn't work because I don't have their personality.
Mm,
Like that works for
mm,
like that that method of sales. Like you know, like if you watch Christo's videos, he does negotiations. Like okay, so like how much like what is the problem that you have and how much is that problem costing you, and if I said I can solve that for you, how much would you be willing to pay me? All of yeah, logically all of that makes sense. The reason why I won't be able to do that is because I can't stay calm like him and do this like wise man act. Like I wear my heart on my sleeves, right? So everybody can tell when I'm lying, everybody can tell when I'm being fake, everyone can tell. Therefore when I try to like go off of the sales script, people are gonna be like, "Shut the fuck up, son!" Like, who are you trying to fool? Like, it's not gonna work for me, right?
mm-hmm,
It's gonna work for some people out there who's logical, like Christo, but it doesn't
mm-hmm,
work for like impulsive, emotional people like me, right? At the same time, I sell purely on emotions, right? When I go into a meeting and I'm selling, people believe me
mm,
because I'm convicted about what I do, right? But then if somebody like Christo or somebody like who's not as convicted, who doesn't have that, try to do what I do, they're just gonna be like, "Ugh, look at this guy trying to hype me up, trying to motivate me." Like it's not gonna work because that's not their style. So you know, some of the most successful people that I know actually don't follow social media, don't know who Tony Robbins is, they don't know Gary Vee. Like a really successful person that I know, he's like in real estate in New York, and what he did was he started a company where he in in normal real estate agency, what happens is the brokerage firm takes 50% commission, and the agent takes 50%. They split the commission, right? But then the brokerage like is paying for the ads, and they're bringing them. They're under this brokerage, right? So it's almost kind of like an employee, but 50-50, right? He's like, no. What he did was he realized that there's some hotshot real estate agents out there who doesn't want to give up 50% of their commission because they can find their own leads, they can find their own customers, they're so good at sales that they just want to keep 100% of their commission. So what
mm,
he did was he created an agency where they just pay him $500 a month flat, and they get to keep 100% of their commission. And he found like 1,000 agents like that. So that's $500,000 a month, right? This guy thinks so outside the box because he's not looking at other influencers and what they're doing. Like this guy's so weird and so different, but he makes a lot of money. Like
mm,
another thing he did was he did an Airbnb. He was like, oh, that's cool. And then he started like buying a few different apartments to the Airbnb. And eventually he went to investors and he got them to buy an entire building. Now he's turning the entire building into an Airbnb only hotel. Like like I think the best way to run a business is like that, where you don't listen to anyone else. You just try things for yourself and see what works, see what doesn't work, and see
mm,
what works for you, see what doesn't work for you, and then lean into those, make little tweaks, and just let that pave the way, rather than somebody's like, no, you got to do it this way, and then now you set a vision and then you try to go there when it's not working and you're trying to force it, right? For me, I'm actually the happiest. You know what? I'll tell you this. You know when I'm the happiest, most productive, most things are working out well for me. I feel like I'm having success. You know, those moments are when I'm not watching any YouTube videos, when I'm not going and looking at any Instagram posts, when I'm not listening to any podcasts, right? Because whenever I'm doing those things, I'm trying to get more ideas and more tips and things like that, which doesn't work, right? And in return, it makes me feel like I'm a loser. You know
Exactly.
what I mean? But
Yes.
when I ignore all of those things and I'm just like focus, put my head down and just focus on my work, that's when I feel like everything's going well.
Mm, I'll take that advice.
Yeah, and also everybody goes through what you're going through. Like
Yeah.
I I have those moments like every day, even now, right? Like I told you in the small group leader meeting, I was like, oh, I'm thinking about doing this. Like I'm thinking about shifting plans. Like it's just every day I need to constantly remind myself, like son, kill your monkey brain. Like
Yeah.
don't get so emotional.
We
Like
need the Sunday service.
exactly.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
It was amazing. Everything you said is truly amazing.
So yeah, me and you, we should both work on this. We got to turn off our YouTube, turn off our social media. Don't look at other people's. Stop buying books.
Yeah, like to be honest, I think I'm going to like right after this podcast, I'm going to write down a lot of notes, keep it just beside me so that I can see them all the time and to constantly remind myself with everything you just said.
Yeah, yeah.
So thank you so much.
And I should do the same actually. Because every time I go on a retreat and every time I go to do something, sort of workshop, seminar, those temporarily make me feel good at that moment, but in the long run, it just makes me feel miserable. When
Mm.
I'm actually when I have like long term sustainable joy and growth and happiness is when I'm just doing my own thing and I'm just focused on it without all this distraction from gurus and experts.
Experts, yes,
Uh,
experts. Yeah,
yeah.
thank you so much, son. It was great just being
So
with you
great
here.
seeing you. So great. I mean,
Thank you.
for those you don't know, when I was in Cairo like a couple months ago, Marwa took me around and showed us everything. So, you know, I'm also grateful for that and grateful for knowing you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marwa.
Shukran.
Shukran. Shukran. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, Marwa. I'll see you
Thank
guys
you so
next
much.
week. And cheers.